and try to see which kind of aspects would be the ones corresponding to the treatment, rehabilitation and wellness. The first definition, brain injury. Brain injury is the statement of the fact. And obviously at this stage there is no treatments, no cures and so on for the brain injury itself, and in no way wellness attempts to do anything about brain injury as such. That has to be clear. But at the same time, in parallel, or as the next clarification of the brain injury thing, there is a definition of the cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is, by definition, it is a disorder of posture and movement. The fact that it's caused, or let's say kind of follows the brain injury, for our purpose here is secondary. The core definition is disorder of posture and movement. So therefore, let's look at that from these perspectives that we have just discussed. So the first thing is try to understand where are the true, what do we have as the final disorder of posture and movement. For instance, this is obviously a seriously affected child, right? And when one looks at him, there would be different ways of interpreting the situation. So if we are to talk about the classic view, right? The classic view, the areas which demonstrate the most pronounced limitations of movement, they would be the area of the elbow, well, to a certain extent the shoulder with the pectoral, extended pectoral group tightness, right? And going further, the classic things, crossing of the legs, thanks to the contractures of the adductors, right? So you see then on the other picture we will see that he actually very clearly, these are those shortnesses of the adductors. Well, on the other pictures we will see also the things related to the stiffness of hip flexors and so on. So you see, for instance, here, right? So you see that one obviously demonstrates that, any extension of the leg as of the extension of the leg is not possible. So that would be enough justification for pointing out that in this case, the worst obvious areas would be these ones. Then on top of this, right, on top of this, there would be this distortion of the vertebral column, right? So you see, which will go under the definition, to a certain extent, under the definition of the scoliosis. So, treatment-wise, one would talk about the non-functional hand, spasticity and rigidity of the arms, right? So you see, but especially localized in the elbow and the shoulder department, well, hand, elbow, and shoulder department. One would get to the point of rigid hyperextension of the legs, rigid hyperextension of the arms, and related limitations of mobility within, of that infamous leg crossing. So those would be the fundamentals, kind of as the descriptions of the worst areas, right? The how bad are the things. But now, if we are to look at the case, right, and ask ourselves what the rehabilitation program for such a child is going to be. Let's be sort of honest and practical if we analyze what the physical therapy typically offers, right? So obviously this family had physical therapy pretty much in a straightforward way, which is a standard means of doing it all over the world, and that physical therapy / rehabilitation program included the attempts to stretch the legs around the hip area, right? Then the attempts to stretch the knee, then the attempts to mobilize the ankle, and afterwards also the suggestion of putting this child into some sort of a cast to keep the legs, to spread the legs, in order to sort of prevent, in inverted comma, the further deterioration of the position of the leg and the pelvis. This child has obviously been offered the AFOs, and then you know, they have been already, I mean, before they came to us, they've done several rounds of the Botox injections in the adductors and into the hamstrings area, right? So here is the hamstring area, obviously the shortness. So, of course, that physical program, right, that physical program included the movements, the attempts to move the arms in order to try to sort of stretch the biceps area and mobilize the elbow. Now, if we look at the head, where we would see the things that are typically associated with the so-called primitive reflexes, right? So you see that could be called the asymmetric tonic neck reflex, so therefore this part would be classified as the primitive and abnormal reflex by the neurologist. So that would be the description of the blacks and the realistic things being done for him. So now if we look further, right, what's on offer considering this twist of the back? So at that stage he is too young and has too much of the potential for growth in order to, let's say, insert any sort of rod into him. So there was an offer of insertion of putting him into the corset, but obviously, you know, for the child in such a condition, with such a pronounced rigidity, getting the corset of any type is not an easy task. So you see he is profoundly uncomfortable. Therefore, well, what happens? Nothing has been done in that department, simply for the fact that the cost and the involvement of the treatment getting back to this lesser evil thing. So they are too much, too hard, and so. So therefore, getting back to this picture, the reality is that even this severe chair, throughout the prism of the filter of observation which is provided by medical and rehabilitation profession, is going to be seen mostly via the lens of the assessment of the evaluation of the legs and evaluation of the arms. Actually, frankly speaking, there is not much to offer about the head. Well, maybe there could be some enthusiasts, you know, who would be trying to make some sort of manipulations on him in order to try to reposition the head, but fortunately nothing like this has been done. But anyway, my point here is very straightforward. We look at this chart and ask a very simple question. Yes, there are the arms, yes, there are the legs, but how about the rest of his body? How about the rest of him? Is the rest of the body, in which, let's say for instance, the abdominal area, does it really, you know, even though there are no specific pathologies, right, no specific abnormalities as such, well, does the one correspond being the same as the one of the healthy individual? Obviously no, right? And then if we ask the other question, well, let's think about it in a different modality. How could these fundamental parts, the other parts of the body map, which are outside of the worst, right? Even if we assume that these are the worst areas, so the next line of reasoning would be quite straightforward. That actually the other areas are far from, you know, even intuitively it's clear that the other areas are very much far from the perfect condition. So, therefore, the natural question asked by wellness, well, are there the reserves for improvement in the other areas, which might not be exactly black, if we look, for instance, at the chest, or if we look at the abdominal level. So you see, if we look at the neck,